everybody. Happy Friday afternoon. Mid-level leaders all across North America in the public works sector, from coast to coast, literally from Alexandria, Virginia to Long Beach, Florida, from the good people of Langley, BC, all the way out to Fredericton, New Brunswick, and all points in between. Even all of you in Trinity, in Texas. How are you? Are you having a good day? I hope you are. Hope you're having a good day. It's a beautiful day here in lovely northern Nevada. Snow is still on the mountain. Show them the snow on the mountain. Jeff, do you have the snow on the mountain? We have a camera poised up on the mountain at the highest peak. And see if Jeff can get that camera brought up, and we'll show you what the snow looks like here in northern Nevada. There it is. There they are. There in northern Nevada. We got two of our crack reporters up there at the top of the peak. All right, you can come back to me now, Jeff. That's not true. That is a lie. That is not there. You say, why would you do that? Just because that's what it looks like in the wintertime around here. But now it's sunny. It's going to be 87, 85, 83 degrees this weekend here in northern Nevada. Beautiful day for Lake Tahoe. And for those of you Celsius, that's 25, I think, 25-ish. All right, what are we doing today? Coaching session. Catalyst for Responsibility coaching session. So you can ask your questions. Ask your questions. What questions do you have? Questions for me. Margie is in the chat box and she is ready. Microphone on and ready to go to answer your questions. Now you might have questions about coaching poor performance. You might have questions about maximizing utilization of your time. You might have questions about buy-in, because we're talking about being a catalyst for responsibility. You might have questions about your one thing and how that's coming along. How is your one thing coming along? Have you done your one thing? Do you have your one thing? You might have a lot of questions. Good. Ask them. Ask them. Would you please ask them? Because questions is the purpose of this coaching session. Now, I do have something I want to talk about. I want to talk about building pride. I want to talk about building pride. Hopefully you printed your handout. And next week, we're going to talk about building pride for 3 days. I'll introduce the concepts today. And then, and I've got my handy-dandy, I'm going to reach over here. I've got my handy-dandy little, talk amongst yourselves for just a moment, would you please? I got my handy-dandy little board. And Jeff, can you bring me or Margie, somebody bring me a tissue to wipe off my handy-dandy little board? And got my handy-dandy little board, and we're going to talk, tissue. Yeah. They brought me another pen. I need tissue. Here we go. Thank you so much, Jeff. Appreciate that. I got my handy-dandy little board, and we're going to talk about pride. We're going to talk about pride in a minute. So you can chat in your questions in the chat box. You can ask your questions right there about any subject that you would like. And we're going to talk about pride. Catalyst for responsibility. Do you have the ability to engage another human being and get them to take greater ownership and responsibility than they did the day before? Because if you're going to be successful in today's day and age, you have to be able to do that. You have to be able to get people to take greater responsibility than they did before and like it. And remember, we talked about Pericles and Pericles of Athens, and that it was Pericles of Athens that gave us some insight and some wisdom how to do that. That it was about casting a vision. It was about showing that things were relevant. It could be of high impact and of high quality, and then people would buy in. They would buy in. I would suggest to you that there is a magic force. A magic force. You know what I watched this last couple of days? Have you ever seen the movie The Hobbit? Seen The Hobbit? I'm not a big Hobbit guy. Not a big J.R.R. Tolkien guy. I'm not a big Hobbit guy. I'm just not. I'm not into those kind of movies. But I was on a flight. I was trying to get from San Francisco to Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, which is, if you look at a map, is basically like this. You just got to go like this. It's kind of like, you just got to go from here to right there. That's all you got to do. It's really simple. Right, Jeff? I mean, it's really simple. But for whatever reason, the airline thought that it was important for me to fly from here to a place called Toronto, and then a place called Calgary, and then a place called Edmonton. It was really amazing. And what was even more amazing about that, they decided to do that at, 1 o'clock in the morning, even though my flight was at 6 o'clock in the afternoon. Yeah, it's great. What airline is that? Oh, you asked. Thank you. It's called United. I don't know if you know of it. My recommendation, don't fly it. Anyways, what's your point? My point is that I was watching this movie, The Hobbit, because on Air Canada, you have, I was on United and then I was on Air Canada, back the other way. So you have this personal entertainment center sitting in front of you. It's really cool. And so I'm going through all these movies, and I've seen the movies. I was like, I don't want to watch them. And I was like, The Hobbit, The Unexpected Journey or something like that. So I'm starting to watch this movie because I'm bored to death and I'm angry. So I thought, I'll calm myself. I'll watch this Hobbit. And what's funny thing about this movie is there's a lot of these little magic things, magic sword and a magic potion and a magic dust or a magic staff. It was magic. And it got me thinking about our dialogue today. Because I just came back from Edmonton, literally at 3 o'clock in the morning last night. And it got me thinking about our talk today. That there is a magic force available to you and I as leaders. There is a magic force. It's like Gandalf's staff or Bilbo Baggins' little sword. Can you believe I even know these names? That's ridiculous. I don't get it. You know the thing that sucks about that movie? You get to the end of the movie and it's not the end of the movie. You see, because I couldn't watch the whole movie when we got across the country. We couldn't watch the whole movie. The movie ended the movie cut off as we were landing. So I couldn't watch the last 15 minutes of the movie. I really wanted to know how the movie ended. So I ended up spending $15.99 in my hotel room so I could watch the last 15 minutes of the damn movie. So, honey, when you see that charge on the bill, it really is The Hobbit, I promise you. All right, here's my point. Magic force. Magic force. Magic force. There is a magic force at your disposal and at my disposal. It's not Bilbo Baggins' sword. It's not Gandalf's staff. It's not the power of the dwarf or the elf. It's pride. Oh, what do you mean pride? You stop and think about the power of pride. Now, I'm not talking about arrogance, conceit. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about false pride. I'm talking about pride. I was always amazed that there were certain employees that no matter who supervised them, no matter who managed them, no matter who was overseeing them, they did an amazing job. They could be supervised by a monkey, and they still did an amazing job. Why? I thought to myself. What was that thing, that magic force that they had? Pride. They came in early. They stayed late because they were proud of their work. They took pride in their work. They regularly solved problems. They regularly solved problems. They never called in sick. They always were willing to go the extra mile. And their work was always, or at least for the most part, exemplary. Pride. You know those people. You might even be one of those people. And if you're lucky enough to hire one of those people because their parents taught it to them, or a coach taught it to them, or a former boss taught it to them, or a music teacher taught it to them, or somebody instilled in them this thing, this magic force, this pride that allowed them to do more with less, to get more things done, to problem solve, to figure it out. Pride. If you're lucky enough to have that person just drop in your lap, hallelujah! Conversely, if you're unfortunate and unlucky, you got a bunch of people that don't even know what the word means. Don't have a clue. Don't understand. They didn't have a parent. They didn't have a coach. They didn't have a former boss. They didn't have a grandparent. They didn't have an uncle. They didn't have a significant person in their life that taught them what it even meant and how to deploy it and use it. They lack pride. And you know what's crazy? There are organizations like that. There are organizations that are full of that magic force, and there are organizations that lack it completely. You've seen them. You may have even been a part of their teams. I've been on that team that was proud. Man, crazy proud. And you may have been a part of that team that nobody cared. Now here's the funny thing. I don't blame the people. What do you mean? I don't blame the people. I don't blame the employees. It's not their fault. Oh, yeah, it is. Responsibility. Catalyst for responsibility, Ian. Okay. But if no one ever taught me what pride looks like, how to have it and keep it, then how can you blame me? You don't just get born with pride. And I might have come into your workplace full of a whole hell of a lot of pride. But as soon as I saw Joe over there giving a half-ass effort and you as the supervisor doing nothing about it, my pride starts to take a hit every day. And I start even asking myself, well, why am I killing myself every day when nobody else is? All of a sudden it starts to go away. And then I see favoritism, or at least the perception thereof. Then I don't get a raise, and people are bad-mouthing what we do as public servants, and the next thing you know, pride is completely gone. Now, I'm speaking the truth here. Right, Jeff? I'm speaking the truth here. This is how the whole thing rolls out and what happens. Now, don't forget, you can put your questions and comments in the chat box. Margie's there looking at the chat box. She can answer your questions for you, or she can grab your questions for you and ask them on air. So this magic force is the supervisor's responsibility. It's the manager's responsibility. It's the director's responsibility. So first of all, do you recognize the magic force when it's in play? Second of all, when that magic force is in play, do you know how to cultivate it, develop it? When the magic force is not in play, do you know how to instill it and deploy it, or cultivate it and deploy it? Can you use pride as a performance management tool? Pride. Although intangible, it is one of the most significant forces that can be utilized for performance management in any organization. Pride. So, do you know how to utilize pride? So what I want to talk about for a few minutes is this thing called pride. Now, here's the funny thing, and you might have to come to this camera, Jeff. Here's the funny thing. There's two kinds of pride, and they take two separate approaches to instill and deploy. The first, individual pride. The second, organizational pride. Individual, organizational. Individual, organizational. Two separate approaches are necessary for individual and organizational pride. Now, hopefully, you printed out your handout that was sent to you in your reminder email. If not, I think it's on the Learning Portal. I think the Pride flowchart is on the Learning Portal. You can, right there to your right, I think it says Pride flowchart. And you can print that out. Hopefully they put that up. So I want to take a few minutes and talk about these. And then next week, for 3 days, I'm going to send you email to unpack it to a greater degree in greater depth. Okay, first, let's talk about organizational pride. Step one. So step one in organizational pride is I have to explain the why. Why what we do is important. You see, if a human being thinks that what they're doing is unimportant, inconsequential, has no meaning, has no purpose, is of no value, they will not take pride in the organization. They may take pride in their specific work, but they're not walking around bragging to people about what they do. If they just, in their mind, are doing something that's menial or unimportant. We brag about the organization we're with because we have pride in it, when we feel like the work that we're doing has value and is important. Well, the funny thing is that what you do has value and is important. You do touch every citizen from cradle to grave. Whether it's through your roads and bridges, aqueducts, water management, and the like, or whether it's through the maintenance of facilities or parks or buildings, public assets, whether it's through the planning and maintaining thereof, or whether it's through the administration of the building process or the maintenance process. All of that and so much more in the public works sector touches every citizen from cradle to grave, period. It's pretty amazing. Pretty amazing. So the question is, have you explained that to your people? Have you explained that to your people? Have you explained why what you do is important? In a real and meaningful way, have you sat down and explained how many billions of dollars of commerce go over roads every day in your community? Or, or the value of public water. Think about it. People walk in to a store and pay $1.79 for water. And you're putting out clean, safe drinking water for pennies, fractions of pennies, 0.003 penny. The value of what you do. Are you explaining that to your people? Do they know the why? I'm going to tell you right now, you're never going to build pride if people think that the organization is involved in a task that has no meaning or purpose or have no redeeming value. You just won't. Oh, they might have individual pride, but they're not going to have organizational pride. Okay, what's next? Well, the next thing is, why are we any good at it? Why are we any good? You see, that's different. What's different about that is, yes, the work we do is important, but we're no good at it. That's always a kicker. So I've got to be able to explain why we're any good at what the important work. So I've got this very, very important task, but what proves that we're any good at it? Well, because I told you. Well, that's not going to be enough for them. And that's why standards are so important. Not only are standards important for performance, they're important for building pride. Imagine if you went bowling. You ever gone bowling? But let's pretend that you hadn't gone bowling. You've never been bowling. You don't even know what bowling is. Have no clue what bowling is. And so I take you to the bowling alley, and I say to you, we're going to play a new game. And you come with me, and we walk down, and there's this wooden lane, and it's got two, like, half holes in it, gutters. And at the end, there's a sheet. And that sheet is covering what you and I know are the pins. But you've never played, so you don't know that. But we know, you and I know, there's pins there. And I say, take this ball and roll it down there. And you say, under the sheet? And I'm like, yeah. You take the ball and you roll it. It goes under the sheet and you hear some noise. Ka-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba. How long would you play that game? Like when I gave you the ball again, you'd be like, roll it under the sheet? Yeah. That's what you want me to do. Uh-huh. This isn't very fun. Well, I know, but it's a game. Bowling. Come on. Roll it under. I'll buy you a beer in a second. We'll have a hot dog. It'll be great. How long would you play that game? You wouldn't. But let's say I took the sheet back, gave you the ball, and you rolled it down for the first time, and it knocked down some pins. When I gave you the ball the next time, what would you inherently want to do? You inherently would want to knock down more, wouldn't you? See, that's the value of standards. standards. Now, in some departments, because it's been so long since we had a standard or enforced a standard, people are going to, they're going to push back initially. But if you use it properly, you prove to them that they're good. Now, it could be APWA accreditation. That's a standard. It could be as simple as this group of parks guys and this group of parks guys, they take care of 3 parks, they take care of 3 parks, and once a year they get to both evaluate each other's parks. It could be as simple as that. It could be safety standards. Many of you on the fleet side of things, you have safety standards. It could be the amount of uptime on equipment. Our equipment is up 97% of the time, and industry standard is 96. Woo! Our equipment is up 87% of the time, and industry standard is 96. Oh, wow, what the hell's wrong? We better get better. So, it's not just enough to preach or evangelize the importance of the work, because then that begs the question from any human being, well, are we any good at it? Gosh, this really, really important work that you're always talking about, how can you prove that we're good? And it's not enough for you just to say it. So whether you create your own internal standards, like I described, this group goes and inspects their park, and this group goes and inspects their park, or whether you use regional or industry standards, either way, you got to have some way of articulating on a regular basis that you're good. Now, it could be intangible, like one of the commissioners writes a letter to everybody. I'm very, very pleased with the work you've been doing, or great job in that emergency crisis when it was all hands on deck. Those work too. But regularly and consistent standards, standards which are regularly communicated are the key. So that's the next step. I've got to then regularly communicate. Now, you should have your little flow chart. I got to communicate that regularly. So regular communication might mean that I meet with every employee at the beginning of the year, and I walk them through the importance of what we're doing. I walk them through the value of what we're doing. I walk them through the key, that we are a key. Well, they know it, Ian. I don't have to do it. Silly sports analogy, but check this out. Vince Lombardi, many of you know his name as a football coach. He probably was one of the best there ever was. He would take professionals who had been playing the game since they were 8 years old, who are now 28-year-old men, so 20 years or whatever, and some of the best players to ever play the game. And you know how he started every single season? He would say, gentlemen, this is a football. Now, maybe you've heard that before. Gentlemen, this is a football. Now, I don't know Vince Lombardi. I have no idea. I've read books about him, whatever. But you know what I think he was doing? He was communicating to them the importance of that tool and of the game to them. He was resetting, recalibrating. Every year, recalibrating. And then on a regular basis. So if it's me, I'm meeting with my employees at the beginning of the year. And whether that's the calendar year or the fiscal year. And I'm saying, hey, this is why what you do is important. This. Push back. We don't feel important. We haven't gotten a raise. We haven't gotten this. We haven't gotten that. We haven't gotten those things. Okay, I know you haven't gotten those things, but that doesn't make it any less important to the little girl that has to drive over the bridge in the school bus. That doesn't make it any less important to the senior who turns on the water and is able to get fresh water. That doesn't have malaria in it. Because that's not the case in every part of the world. So you got to recalibrate. Now, if it's me, I only do that. Do I do that at the beginning of the year? I'm doing it every month. because I'm going to regularly communicate why we're any good at that important work. That this is a football. So this is the football. This is important. And then we check the score every week. And we find out really quick if we're any good at the work. Well, Ian, your athletic metaphor is not applicable in the workplace. Well, okay. Then I would just say this. When a human being believes that the work that they're doing is valuable, significant, and important, they will act more like it. When a human being thinks that they're an interchangeable part that no one gives a crap about, they will act like it. Period. So, how are you regularly communicating the importance of the work, and what tools do you have, standards are you following to be able to gauge the work that's being done every day against some kind of objective industry, regional, or internally made standard? And then, how are you regularly communicating that? Is it in a meeting form? Is it a weekly newsletter? Is it your director do a YouTube video and he sits at his desk every week and says, okay, troops, here's what's going on, here's what we were great at, here's what we weren't so great at, and here's why we're important, and here's how I know that you're being great at the important work. Boom. It goes out to everybody watches it. Well, I kind of just walk around and tell people, Ian. The only problem with that is when you have a busy week, it didn't happen. So that's why I think it's more formal. So I've got to have some kind of formal way that I'm regularly communicating. Some kind of formal way. Okay? Formal way. Some kind of formal way. So look at this flow. If I want people to take pride in the organization, if I don't want them to take off their logoed wear before they go somewhere because they're ashamed, if I want them to brag at the barbecue, the family barbecue, because they're proud of who they work for, which will then translate into problem solving, then translate in going the extra effort, then translate into taking better care of equipment and the like. Then one, I'm going to communicate why the work we do is important. We don't make widgets every day. Two, I'm going to regularly communicate why what we do through standards, either internally created or some kind of industry standard, that we judge ourselves against regularly, and then regularly judge ourselves against, and then I'm going to regularly communicate that in some formal ways, not just informal ways, but formal ways. Maybe it's a recognition wall where we put the standard up and we say how we're doing. Our equipment is up and running 98% of the time, and the industry standard is 73%. God dang, we are good, man. Or whatever. Don't put the sheet in front of the bowling pins. And then I'm going to do that in a formal way. Ian, people should just take pride in their work. Period. All this namby-pamby nonsense, putting up scoreboards and all that, that's crap. Well, okay. Let's unpack that for just a second. Why don't people just take pride? Well, think about the institutions that used to instill pride in young people. The family unit. Well, that's fractionalized at best. 58% divorce rate. That means that the people who are under 18 today, more than half of them will live in a home at some time or another with just one parent. Now, I'm not against single parents. I'm not attacking single parents. I'm just saying it's hard to instill the intangibles sometimes when you're trying to work a full-time job and raise 3 kids. Okay, what about our institutions of faith? They used to be counted on to instill pride. Participation in those institutions has declined significantly. Well, what about like the Girl Scouts and the Boy Scouts and sports? Well, did you know participation in organized sports is on the significant decline? Well, you see all these kids playing football. Elite sports, kids are participating. But if you're not in an elite sport by the time you're 10, the kid says this, well, I haven't been in it, I can't do it. My daughter said to me the other day, I haven't been doing it, Dad, since I was 3, so I can't join. Now, all of a sudden, the institution of athletics that used to instill the intangibles, where you and I could just go out when we were a high school student, I think I'll go out for football today. Let's go. No. You better have been playing football since you were 6 or you won't make the team. The downside to that is that vehicle for building pride ain't happening. You think that the kid is learning pride on his Facebook? You think he's learning pride playing World of Warcraft? Oh yeah, he's learning how to score. That's fake, dude. I don't know if... Hello? It's fake. It's not real. So he's taking pride in something that's fake. It has no redeeming value anywhere in society. So the institutions, athletic and the like, that brought up and instilled those things in our kids aren't there. And not just this generation. Don't blame the 15-year-old now. But you know what? You could say that for probably the last 2 generations, Jeff. So don't be surprised when people come to you and they don't know how to take pride. Don't blame them. Who would have taught it? Who's role modeling it? So I think you got to have some strategies for organizationally. Okay? How about the individual? Now don't forget, you can ask your question. Nobody's asking any questions today. Margie's bored. Shouldn't use my green bottle. I know. Durham, I'm not using your water bottle. I'm sorry. A little Diet Mountain Dew for me this morning. I'm sorry. Individual pride. Now, how do I instill individual pride? Ian, either you have it or you don't. I don't agree with that. Because personally, I didn't have pride. I didn't comb my hair. I didn't brush my teeth. I didn't take care of myself. I didn't have pride. Somebody instilled it in me. Coaches and teachers, recreation professionals, they instilled it in me. They shaped me up. They squared me away. They instilled pride in me. And then even when I went into the workplace for the first time, I really didn't understand work ethic and pride. And then along the way, people instilled it in me. So if I, a lazy, uneducated, who didn't have an ounce of pride guy, can go from that to the things we've been able to accomplish because we just took pride in our town, in our community, in our nation, or whatever, then it can be taught. Because if I can learn it, anybody can learn it. The key is, what are the steps to teaching it? Because more and more, it's probably not coming to you. Okay, let's walk through that. You got the flow chart there. You've got your flow chart in front of you. If not, you can print it out. Okay? Pride. Individual pride. Now, what's funny is the first couple steps are similar. Okay. Why? Now, here's the nuance. Not why what we do is important, but how but why their specific task contributes to that bigger vision. So yeah, I know our organization's important, but I'm just it's a killer of pride. But I'm just a custodian. I'm just a maintenance guy. I'm just an outside Parks 1. I'm just a. I know the work we do is important. We touch every citizen from cradle to grave. Our department does, but what I do isn't important. My retort to that is, in these difficult economic times, if you got a job, it's an indication of its importance. I was flying in a plane. Oh, a lot of flying stories today. Yes, very flying oriented. Because I'm still pissed getting home at 3 o'clock in the morning when I should have got home hours before. United Airlines. Let me just drop that in every once in a while. So I look out the window on the tarmac one time, and there is a guy, and he's got this wrench that literally is longer than my wingspan. Longer than you can see in the box on the viewer there. That's how long it was. And he is working on this engine while we're all sitting in the plane, which I just don't think is a good idea, but there he is. Because, I mean, it doesn't engender trust, right? But there he is. And what did engender trust, though, is this guy is leaning on this wrench, man. I mean leaning on the wrench. I mean like getting after the wrench with all that he has in him to tighten up whatever he was tightening. Why? Well, because people's lives are at stake, Ian. Exactly. Somebody clearly articulated the connection between that little bolt and the mission. That little thing and the purpose of the plane. That little thing and the impact of not tightening it. Somebody articulated to him clearly, and he understood clearly that that needed to be done right, or people would die, perhaps. So, there can't be any just us. You as a leader have to clarify. Remember we talked about that when we talked about coaching performance. You have to clarify how what that specific role was meant to do. You clearly identify the goal. You clearly identify that individual's role. And you clearly identify what winning is. Not what winning is standard for the org, but winning standard for them. So that's the next step. The next step is individual performance standards. Individual performance standards. So, here's why your role is critical to our organization. Here's why your role is critical to our organization. And now we're going to measure how you're doing in it. That bowling thing again. Now, individual performance standards. Now, many of your departments, the performance evaluation form comes from HR. And it's the same for everybody. It's the same for everybody. And you might say to me, well, Ian, I can't create an individual performance standard. I'm not allowed to. The third-party representation agreement precludes me from doing that, Ian. Or HR precludes me from doing that, Ian. I am not allowed to do that, Ian. Okay, that could be. I hear that. But that doesn't stop you from creating fun internal standards. Well, how would I do that? I would just sit down with my guys and gals and I just say this. What's it take to be good at this job? Huh? Yeah, just what's it take to be good at this job? What are the key indicators that a person is any good at this job? Well, you got to be able to do this, and you got to be able to do this, and you got to be able to do this, and you got to be able to do this, and you got to be able to do this. Okay. They just created their own performance evaluation. And then you put a 1, you put a 5, and have them rate themselves. So they came up with the indicators, 1 through 5, and then just let them tell you what they think of themselves. And if you go back to that delegation matrix, when we talked about delegation, we already talked about where they were proficient, not proficient, and everything that's in between. So I don't think it's inappropriate to ask the employees, hey, what does it take to be good at this job? What are the indicators that a person is good at this job? And then let them judge themselves. That would be a standard. And then you could say to them, and let me tell you what I think. So you judge, and you guys judge me, right? You already sent out that survey, right? There's a reason why we sent that survey out first. But one way or another, the performance evaluation has got to be as individual as it possibly can. Individual performance standard is key. Now, that doesn't mean you don't have some generic things that transcend all job descriptions and all titles. But the more individual that we can get that performance evaluation, the better. Now, here's the funny thing. Many of our systems, right? A couple weeks ago we talked about systems. Many of the systems that we utilize for performance measurement are weak at best. And people don't take them seriously. And they're the last thing that we do. And if you're responsible for doing the performance evaluation, oftentimes you scramble at the last minute to get them done. But when doing that, you rob the individual of an opportunity to build pride. An opportunity to build pride. An opportunity to go like this. Yeah! Woo! How many opportunities do human beings get for that in a week? How many opportunities do human beings in today's day and age have to go like this? I did something today. Something of value, something of meaning, something of purpose. I was good at something today. I think there is value in that. I think that as it becomes fewer and fewer and fewer and farther between, people just start going through the motions of life. Life is just a series of Wednesdays, man. Oh, it's Wednesday, 2 more days to go. I guess I'll get up in the morning. I'll walk outside. Well, not get my paper. I don't get my paper. I'll open up my whatever and look at my home page. I'll go to work, come home. I'll listen to my spouse, listen to my kids, go to bed, walk my dog, whatever. And I'll just go through the frickin' motions of life. Because there's never an opportunity for this. Yeah. And it has nothing to do with athletics. It has to do with the energy of life. Well, a performance evaluation is the opportunity to let somebody know where they stand. That's why that delegation matrix and moving people from ask and recommend to act and report immediately or act and report periodically to act on own is like, yeah, I got better at something, man. Awesome. The more opportunities that I can give an employee to get better at something, then the more opportunity I have to build pride. Well, you don't know my cynical people. They're cynical. Well, of course they're cynical. Because they've gone through and been inoculated with what I described before. So yes, it does take some time to knock off that crustiness and knock off that cynicism. But the cumulative effect of everything that we've talked about the last 9 weeks or whatever it's been, the cumulative effect of that is they'll be ready to talk about building pride. They'll be ready to talk about their individual performance. Not 100% of them, but we've already talked about implementing change. You're not going to get 100% to get on board anyways. All I need is a critical mass, which is about, 40%. So 4 out of 10, if I could just get 4 out of 10, then the 2 others who are kind of on the fence, they'll go that way because people want to be a part of a winner. And yeah, you're going to have 2 that are a pain in the ass all the time. I just need to get them to shut their mouth. And the contextual peer pressure will get them to shut their mouth. But if you don't have that dynamic in play, they're going to rule the day. Who's responsible for all of that? You. You. My hands are tied and I can't. Well, you can't what? You can't ask everybody what it takes to be good at the job, kind of jot down some notes, and then start saying to people, you were good at that? And start pointing out? So that's the next step. Oop, I dropped my pen. Just a moment. Notice that I had to hold my breath to bend over. You heard, because I'm trying to get in shape. Doing a tough mutter. You guys ever heard of the tough mutter? Doing a tough mutter, a Spartan race. Woo, me and my wife, yeah. My wife's like running 4 miles a day. Never ran a mile in her life. Running 4 miles a day. Think about that. Never run a mile in her life, and she's running 4 miles a day now in just a few weeks. And running them fast, too, 11-minute miles, 10-minute miles. Pretty amazing. I'll get to that question in just a second. All right, standard. So, once I've evaluated, I then have to have some formal way to celebrate. Some formal way to celebrate. Not Employee of the Month. Employee of the Month is ridiculous. All right, Margie, go.
When does celebrating the small things become so commonplace it does not mean anything anymore? Example, I tell them another good job and no motivation is evident.
Okay, so let's talk about that. And that's right in line with this, what we were about to talk about, celebrate. So when does telling them well done just become part of the furniture in the living room, right? You walk past it every day, don't even notice it. First of all, when I have standards. So this is the standard. When you perform above the standard, I openly recognize above the standard. Now, I thank you for hard work when I see it every day. But I formally recognize when performance is above the standard. Now, personally, I would never not thank somebody for a job well done just because they might stop appreciating it. I wouldn't do that. If somebody performs above the standard, they get an attaboy. Great work. Great work. But if you remember when we went back, remember the always and never sheet? It basically said never blow smoke. Never say good job if it's not a good job. Never say well done if it's not well done. So for me, anytime somebody meets or exceeds the standard, well done. Because I'm reinforcing what I expect. I don't think you can do it too much. However, I think a lot of times we reinforce below standard. So you got to be specific about what you're reinforcing. Good job at what? So I would be I'm very specific about what I'm saying good job about. Because maybe overall it wasn't good job, but this specific thing was the performance I wanted. In some other areas it wasn't. So I'm going to say, good job on maintaining that blank the last week. Good job on being on time with that paperwork. So first, I'm going to be specific. Well, first, I'm not going to pull back my attaboys just because of the potential that it might gloss over. Second, to ensure my attaboy has more of an impact, I'm going to be as specific as possible. Third, I'm never going to praise if it's below standard. I'm going to coach. If it's below standard, I'm going to tell you it's below standard, and then we're going to get you better at it. If it's at or above standard, I'm going to be specific about what I'm praising. And then, and this flows into what I was just about to talk about, in my celebration, I'm going to be very, very clear about my celebration. Remember when we talked about motivation, we said there was certain hot buttons? Well, celebration is the same way. So when I attaboy somebody in a formal way, I'm going to try to do something that's impactful to them. We're having a pizza party. And then we have so many pizza parties that nobody even knows why we're having pizza parties anymore. It just becomes like a bribery. So what's the standard? When you exceed the standard, here's how we're going to celebrate. But when you do that tangible approach to motivation, then the pizza party isn't effective anymore. Employee of the month. So tell me, here's what we do. We pick one person out of the 20 that was great this month. But what about the other 19? Well, we're not going to make everybody employee of the month. The hell you're not. If every single person of the 20 exceeded the performance standard consistently and regularly, why wouldn't we make them all employee of the month? Well, you just got to pick out the one. You're talking about giving everybody a trophy, man. And I'm not doing that giving everybody a trophy stuff. That's what's wrong with our society. No, listen, you didn't hear me. You didn't hear me. If everybody exceeded the performance standard regularly and consistently, why wouldn't we celebrate them all? Why wouldn't they all be Employee of the Month? Here's the bar. If you're able to jump over the bar, we're going to celebrate. Now, I wouldn't disagree with you. Maybe we need to reevaluate that standard. Maybe we can move that standard up slightly. Maybe we've been expecting too little of ourselves. But when it's an industry standard that we're comparing ourselves to, hey, it's like that Super Bowl ring. Everybody gets a Super Bowl ring, man. The practice players get a Super Bowl ring. The guy who works in the ticket office. I met a guy the other day when I was in Shreveport, Louisiana. And he came rolling in and he had a big ass Sugar Bowl ring on. Sugar Bowl championship ring from like when he was at LSU or something. I was like, dude, you played at LSU? Look at that ring. Diamond and stuff and champion and No, I worked in the ticket office. Really? You worked in the ticket office and you got a ring? Oh, yeah. I filled the stadium every time, man. And that was an important role on the team. He exceeded the standard. They gave him a ring. So, to your question and to my point, it has to be sincere. It has to be authentic. It has to be based on a standard. It has to be a standard that we regularly enforce. It has to be specific to exactly what they do that's receiving the good job. And just saying good job isn't enough. Because maybe somewhere in that performance there wasn't a good job. And then finally, I would make it formal in some way. And the formal piece is, or must be, specific to their hot button. Remember we talked about those hot buttons of motivation? So it needs to be specific. For some people it's tangible. For some people it's intangible. For some people it's more reward, or I'm sorry, more recognition. For some people they don't want recognition, they just want more authority. For some people it's not authority and recognition, they just want you to come over and quietly tell them thank you. The good supervisor knows what that recognition is for that person, and then uses it as a way to build pride and motivate. So as you said in your question, me walking around saying good job doesn't do anything. Well, maybe that's not what your people need to move them into action. Go back and listen to the systems discussion around motivation. But generally speaking, if I'm specific when I say that was well done, you did a great job in that task, specifically, that's going to carry some weight. That's going to carry some weight. One that I used to do, I called it Eagle of the Week. We celebrated people every week. Every week we celebrated people. And somebody did something good this week, and I was going to celebrate it. And we were going to get excited about, oh man, that's mamby-pamby, that's trite. You know what? They loved it. The most cynical, jaded guys I've ever seen loved it. Because now life wasn't a grind. Now we were achieving something. Now we were knocking down some pins. And when I handed them the ball, they wanted to knock down some more. It could be as simple as you looking around, somebody did something good, and you just write them a little handwritten note. Put it in their box. Well done. Doesn't have to be a big deal. Well done. I used to do this where I would give out Band-Aids. After we had an all-hands-on-deck situation, everybody had to pitch in, and it just kicked everybody's butt or whatever. I'd walk around on Monday morning and hand out Band-Aids. And they'd be like, what are you doing? Hey, I know you got your butt kicked this week, and I just really appreciate your hard work. Thank you very much. Or Hershey Kisses. That's another good one. Walk around and just flip guys Hershey Kisses. What's that for? That's because when that snowstorm came and we were all hands on deck and you guys did a phenomenal job, and I'm not going to kiss your ugly ass, so here, I love you. Right? Everybody's like, how come you don't get the ones with the almonds? Silly. Stupid. But I'm rewarding a specific task and saying you were above standard. Now, I'm going to tell you something. I know this. I know this. And I know it works, and I've used it in a number of different arenas. I used it in the athletic arena. I used it in the business world. We use it in communities all across North America and beyond. It works on a community level, developing community pride and individual pride. It works on a business level. It works in the public sector, where you don't have the same incentives that you might have in the private sector. And it works in schools and organizations and nonprofit. It works because it's based on human nature. People want to be a part of a winner. But on a daily basis, they get ground down and beaten down. You have an opportunity through the intentional and strategic action steps that you can take to build organization pride, and strategic and intentional steps that you can take to build individual pride. Now, next week, we're going to unpack this in 3 emails to drill down on it as some reminders and give you some more tips and ideas. And in the last email, I'm going to make a point. And that's pretty simply this. Ultimately, you know what the biggest factor is? You. Studies show that pride usually emanates from the guy that they work for or the gal that they work for. If people aren't proud of the guy or gal that they work for, their opportunity for organizational individual pride diminishes significantly. They may hold individual pride and say my boss is a clown, but certainly they'll have a hard time taking pride in their organization if they think their boss is a clown. They'll have a hard time. So where does this all come from? You, me. I can't think that my people will take pride in their organization or their specific endeavor if they don't have some sense of pride in who they work for and what they work for. So ultimately, I'm responsible for the pride that's within the organization, or frankly, in anything that I do as the leader. So you as the leader are responsible. Well, that's the director. Well, no. All studies show that the person that's most closely aligned or most closely interacting with those individuals is the one that's going to be the source of pride. Now, I agree with you. I wish everybody came to me with pride deeply instilled because of all of its magic force. Bilbo Baggins' sword, the ring, right? Aragorn's sword, or whatever the hell that guy was. Gandalf's staff, magic. Well, this is magic. Because when I have it in place and when I see it, people call in less, people work harder, performance is higher, creative ideas, less stress in the workplace. It's a magic force, dude. It is an absolute magic force. And here's the other funny thing. It doesn't cost any money. It doesn't cost any money. It just costs some sweat and a plan. Well, I don't like your plan, Ian. Okay, that's fine. I don't care if you like my approach to building pride, but you better have one. You want to be a successful manager, leader, supervisor, director, whatever, you better be able to build both individual pride and organizational pride. Okay, I look up at the clock. I see we're close to the end of our time. Right now is the time to ask a question if you got one. If you got a question, ask it. One thing. Some of you still haven't sent in your one thing. Send in your one thing. We only got a few more weeks left, man. We're almost done. We only got a few more weeks left of this thing. So if you haven't sent in your one thing, send it in. Send it in. I thank you for all you do. Appreciate all of your hard work and energy. You're a mid-level leader, which means you're the key to the success of your organization. And your organization touches in a meaningful way every single citizen from cradle to grave. And when you get better, your organization gets better. And as your organization gets better, your community gets better. Thank you for your time. We'll talk to you on Monday. Bye-bye, everybody.